I sat down at the table, the last empty chair scraping against the hardwood floor. My father smirked, swirling his glass of wine. "You really think you belong here?" he asked, his voice dripping with disdain. Before I could answer, my sister leaned in, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her whole body reeks of pig manure. Disgusting. Laughter rippled across the table. I didn't defend myself. I didn't flinch. Instead, I folded the napkin neatly onto my lap and smiled. They thought I was the embarrassment of the Carter family, the dropout, the farm girl, the mistake no one mentioned at holidays. What they didn't know was that this restaurant, the one they had bragged about for weeks, the one with a reservation waitlist longer than their patience, was mine. And as the restaurant manager approached with a calm smile, I knew the moment had come. "Welcome back, Ms. Emily. Your usual table is ready." I wasn't always the woman who could make my father choke on his wine. Once, I was simply Emily Carter, the middle child, the odd one out in a family that worshipped polish, prestige, and perfection. In suburban Connecticut, our lives revolved around SAT scores, tennis camps, and whispered conversations about Ivy League acceptance letters. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden boy. Captain of the debate team, valedictorian, and already networking with Wall Street alumni before he even graduated high school. My younger sister, Claire, was the darling of my parents' social circle, fluent in French by sophomore year, piano prodigy, destined for Yale. And then there was me. I loved pigs, not in the childish, farm animals are cute, kind of way. No, I was obsessed. At 12, I could tell the difference between barley and acorns in a feed blend. I spent weekends mucking stalls at a small family farm, bottle-feeding runt piglets, while my siblings went off to debate tournaments and fencing lessons. My mother once pinched her nose when I walked through the kitchen after chores. "You smell uncivilized," she said coldly, as if dirt on my boots was some unforgivable flaw. When I was 14, I announced at the dinner table that I wanted to build a sustainable farm, raising heritage breed pigs in open pastures. No hormones, no confinement crates. My father didn't even look up from his Wall Street Journal. "That's not a real future," he said flatly. "That's dirt in disguise." Claire laughed. "What are you going to call it? Pig Princess Incorporated?" The table roared. I went silent, but inside, I was already planning. I tried to follow their rules. I enrolled in college, majored in economics like they wanted. But halfway through my second semester, I knew I was living someone else's dream. I dropped out. The night I told them, my father slammed his fist on the dining table so hard the silverware rattled. "You're throwing away a legacy for manure," he spat. My mother stood up mid-sentence and left the room without another glance. By the next morning, my name had vanished from family plans. No more birthday calls, no Christmas cards. Not even a condolence text when my grandmother passed away. It was as though Emily Carter had been erased. But what they never understood was this. Their rejection didn't kill me. It carved me. It stripped away any illusion that love in my family was unconditional. And once the illusion was gone, all that remained was the raw truth. If I wanted to build a life worth living, I'd have to do it on my own boots in the mud, hands blistered, heart unbowed. When I left Connecticut, I didn't pack much, just a duffel bag of clothes, a handful of savings scraped together from part-time jobs, and a stubborn belief that I could make something real out of mud. I rented 5 acres of neglected farmland in rural Vermont. The soil was rocky, the fences sagged, and the only shelter was a rusted trailer that smelled of mildew. That trailer became my home. My boots were secondhand, my blankets thin, and my only company came from the 7 pigs I rescued from a shuttered farm that had abandoned them midwinter. They were half-starved, their ribs showing, their squeals desperate. I built them a crude shelter out of salvaged wood, nailed together under a December sky so cold I couldn't feel my fingers. I slept in that trailer with a space heater that barely worked, listening to their breathing through the thin walls, wondering if we'd survive the night. I worked 16-hour days, every day. Morning meant breaking ice from the water troughs, slopping feed into tin pails, and mucking stalls until my shoulders ached. Afternoons were spent fixing fences, patching leaks, or hauling hay bales I could barely lift. At night, when the cold crept in through the cracks in the trailer walls, I sat at a rickety table calculating feed costs versus market prices, trying to figure out how to stretch $1 into 3. People in town called me the pig girl. At the general store, I heard the whispers. She left college for this? Poor thing. Some laughed. Some pitied me. Even the local farmers smirked when I explained I wanted to raise pigs ethically. No hormones, no confinement crates, pasture-fed only. Sounds cute, one of them told me, until they tear up an acre overnight. And he wasn't wrong. I made mistakes, big ones. I lost money when the first litter of piglets didn't survive the winter. I cried the day I realized I had to sell a gilt-eyed bottle fed just to cover the feed bill. There were mornings when I wanted to stay curled under my thin blanket, too exhausted to face the mud. But then I'd hear the pigs grunting, waiting for me, and something inside me hardened. Because for the first time in my life, my work mattered. It wasn't about grades or resumes or some future title my parents wanted for me. It was about keeping those animals alive, building shelter from scraps, and proving to myself that survival wasn't shameful, it was sacred. I was broke, blistered, and often bone-tired, but I felt more alive in those fields than I ever had in the pristine halls of my family's suburban home. Every sunrise brought a new test, and every night I fell asleep with mud still on my hands. And even though the world laughed at me, I kept going. Because deep down, I believed something they never did. That purpose, honesty, and hard labor could build something beautiful even if it started with nothing but pigs and mud. The turning point came on a day I nearly gave up. I had just finished another exhausting morning of hauling water buckets and repairing a fence that the pigs had demolished overnight. My boots were soaked, my hair matted with hay, and my hands cracked from the cold. I'd scraped together enough to buy bacon from my own pigs, cured the old-fashioned way, and that evening I decided, half out of defiance, half out of pride, to cook something worthy of the effort. I pulled the bacon from the smoker, still warm, its scent rich with hickory. I plated it beside eggs from my neighbor's hens and a bundle of greens I'd grown behind the trailer. On impulse, I set up my phone on a milk crate, hit record, and spoke into the lens. This is what happens when you respect the animal. Real pork, real process. I filmed myself slicing the bacon, the crackling audible, the yolks spilling gold over the plate. I uploaded the video that night with no caption, no plan, just a tired heart daring the world to laugh again. Then I went to bed. 3 days later, my phone nearly caught fire. The video had 2 million views. Comments poured in. Where can I taste this? Do you sell it? I've never seen food look so honest. For the first time, people weren't mocking me. They were curious, hungry. Soon, an editor from a small food blog reached out, asking if they could feature my cooking. Then a regional magazine sent a reporter to photograph the pigs, the trailer, the mud I lived in. They called me the girl building a farm with nothing but grit. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real, and readers devoured it. Then came the email I couldn't quite believe. A small investor group from Boston wanted to talk. They'd seen my video, read the articles, and liked the values behind my farm-to-table approach. I didn't know how to draft a business plan, but I knew how to build trust. So instead of spreadsheets and glossy presentations, I invited them to dinner right there on the farm. I strung up cheap bulbs from the hardware store, dragged out mismatched tables and chairs from garage sales, and cooked with every ounce of skill and stubbornness I had. 6 courses, all from scratch. Pork belly glazed with maple syrup tapped from a neighbor's trees, slow-roasted shoulder with heirloom apples, and my grandmother's cornbread recipe served hot from a skillet. The investors sat under the stars, wrapped in coats, sipping cider from chipped mugs, and when the plates were empty, they didn't ask for numbers. They asked how soon we could start. The next morning, they signed the papers. That was the night Honest Table was born, not in a boardroom, but in a muddy field under strings of borrowed light. We didn't start with anything fancy. The investors and I converted an abandoned feed store on the edge of town. The walls were still scarred with years of dust and grain, and the floors creaked under every step. But to me, it was perfect, a place with history, with bones strong enough to carry a dream. We scrubbed until our hands blistered, knocked down walls, and rebuilt tables from reclaimed barnwood. The chairs didn't match, but I liked it that way. We painted the front door ourselves and hung a simple sign, a small iron silhouette of a pig. Underneath, in plain white letters, it read, "Honest Table." The first night we opened, I was terrified no one would come. I had borrowed pots from neighbors, begged friends to help serve, and filled the air with the smell of hickory smoke drifting from the kitchen. By 6 o'clock, the gravel lot outside was full. By 7, people were sitting on lawn chairs they had brought from home. By 8, a line wrapped around the block. Word spread quickly. The local paper called it a restaurant born out of mud and fire. A Boston blogger drove 2 hours just to taste our slow-braised pork shoulder with cider glaze. Within weeks, food writers were posting photos of our cornbread dripping with hot honey, or our crispy pig ear tacos balanced with lime crema. But it wasn't just the food, it was the story. People could feel it, the grit, the labor, the honesty behind every plate. Each bite carried a piece of the farm, of my journey, of the belief that food should taste like where it came from. Soon, the Honest Table became more than a restaurant. It became a pilgrimage. People waited 3 hours for a seat. Some brought blankets and played cards in the parking lot while they waited. Others begged for takeout boxes, just to bring a taste home. I worked the line every night. My boots were still muddy when I tied on my apron. I wasn't a polished chef in starched whites. I was just Emily, the girl who had once lived in a trailer with 7 half-starved pigs. But now, every plate I sent out carried dignity. The press started showing up. A writer from Bon Appetit called our pork belly the most honest plate in New England. The New York Times sent a critic who titled her review, "The Pig Girl Who Built a Kingdom." I laughed at the nickname, but secretly, it fueled me. Because for the first time, the world wasn't laughing at me. They were listening, and every reservation, every plate, every word of praise reminded me that the mud I once carried like shame had become the very foundation of something extraordinary. Honest Table wasn't just feeding people, it was proving that integrity could be delicious. Success is a strange thing. It doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It creeps in quietly, disguised as long nights and endless waiting lists. Within a year, Honest Table went from a local curiosity to a destination. People drove hours, some even slept in their cars just for the chance to taste what we served. With attention came offers. Big ones. Corporations waved contracts in my face, promising millions if I would sell the brand, scale it fast, and let them rewrite the story. Their deals came wrapped in fine print, full of clauses that would strip away the very thing that made Honest Table honest. I turned them all down. That's when I met Gloria Sandoval. She was a Latina entrepreneur who had built her own bakery empire from nothing but flour and persistence. She walked into my restaurant one night, ordered the pork chop with heirloom apples, and stayed long after closing to talk. "What you've built is beautiful," she said. "But you can't keep running it on stubbornness alone. Let's grow it, but without selling your soul." For the first time, someone wasn't trying to buy me out. She wanted to build with me. We became partners. I kept the name, the menu, the vision. She brought systems, networks, and discipline, the kind of scaffolding I had never learned in business school because I never went. Together, we opened our flagship in Boston, inside a restored train station with vaulted ceilings and exposed brick. The kind of place my parents would have bragged about if someone else's name was on the lease. The opening night felt surreal. Lines stretched around the block, photographers snapped photos of the reclaimed pine tables, and the open kitchen glowing with firelight. Within 2 weeks, our waitlist stretched 6 months out. Food critics declared us the beating heart of the farm-to-table movement. And then came the call from Forbes. I was named to their 30 under 30 list in food and drink. My inbox filled with invitations, conferences, panels, sustainability summits. People wanted me to stand on stages, to tell the story of the farm girl who became an empire builder, but I refused to put my face on the website. I declined glossy magazine covers. The brand wasn't about me, it was about the food, the soil, the belief that honesty could be tasted. I insisted on keeping my last name off public documents, my hometown off press releases. Let the plates speak. Let the work tell the story. And yet, part of me knew the truth. One day, the Carter family would find out. They'd see the lines, hear the chatter, and realize the daughter they had erased was building something the world now celebrated. When that day came, I wasn't sure if I wanted to hide or finally stand in the light. The email arrived late on a Tuesday night. I had just finished a 14-hour shift at the Boston flagship and was scrolling through reservations when a familiar name stopped me cold. Claire Carter. Subject line: family dinner, engagement celebration. I clicked, my stomach tightening. Emily, it read. We've managed to get a reservation at Honest Table for this Saturday at 7:30. It's for 7 of us: Mom, Dad, Daniel, me, and a few others. You should come. You owe Mom at least that much. Don't be late. Attached below was the confirmation. Honest Table, flagship location. I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands felt suddenly heavy, my throat tight. They had no idea. They'd waited months, pulled strings, begged favors, whatever it took to sit at a table I had built, to dine on food I had created, to celebrate in a space that existed because of the daughter they'd erased. My first instinct was to cancel the reservation. I could call the manager, say the system double-booked, blame kitchen renovations, invent 100 excuses. It would be easy to make them disappear again, just like they had once made me. But something stopped me. Not revenge, not pride, something quieter, steadier, readiness. I wasn't that broken girl anymore, the one who cried into a thin pillow in a freezing trailer, who begged for scraps of approval, who wore their rejection like a scarlet letter. I had built something real, something loved, something strong enough to hold me upright. If they were going to see me again, it wouldn't be at some awkward holiday brunch where they pretended to tolerate me. It would be here, in my house, surrounded by everything they told me would never amount to anything. I typed slowly, deliberately. Confirmed. I'll be there. On Saturday, I arrived 10 minutes early. Not through the staff entrance, not in my chef's coat, not carrying a clipboard of orders. I came as myself. A clean denim dress. Leather boots, still dusted with straw. A jacket frayed at the cuffs where piglets once chewed. I didn't hide the scent of hay and smoke that clung to me. I didn't paint over the years I had lived. This was me, the same girl they once called disgraceful, the same girl they thought would crawl back in shame. The hostess caught my eye as I stepped through the front doors. She smiled knowingly. "Miss Emily," she whispered. "Seat me last," I murmured back. She nodded. From the hallway, I could already hear them, my father reading the wine list like scripture, my mother's clipped tone correcting him, Claire's laugh bouncing against the brick walls. I lingered in the shadows, heart steady, until the hostess gave the cue. Then I walked toward the table. For the first time in years, I wasn't the outsider. I was the owner, and they were about to find out. I approached the table slowly, my boots echoing softly against the hardwood. For a heartbeat, no one looked up. Then my father glanced at me, smirk curling across his lips. "You really think you belong here?" he said, swirling his wine as if he owned the place. I forced a polite smile. "Good evening." Claire leaned toward my mother, loud enough for me to hear. Her whole body reeks of pig manure. Disgusting. My mother lifted her champagne flute, eyes skimming me with practiced disdain. "You could have dressed up a little, Emily." "This is my version of formal," I replied evenly, unfolding my napkin across my lap. My father chuckled. "I hope you can at least afford dinner. This place isn't cheap." I didn't bite. I let their words wash over me like the mud I'd long since learned to live in. I poured myself water and stayed silent. No one asked how I'd been. No one said they were glad to see me. To them, I was still the dropout, the embarrassment, the farm girl who chose manure over money. What they didn't know was that the table they sat at, the food they were praising on Instagram, the reservation they had waited weeks for, every bit of it belonged to me. The appetizers were cleared. They critiqued each dish as if they were food critics. My father asked if the bacon was too thick. Claire scraped the crackling off her flatbread. My mother pushed aside pickled onions with a sigh. They had no idea they were dissecting my creations. That's when Marcus, our general manager, appeared. Polished, calm, voice like steel wrapped in velvet. He carried a leather folder, stopped at the edge of the table, and asked, "Excuse me, would there be a Miss Emily Carter seated here tonight?" My father frowned. Why? He demanded. Is there a problem? Marcus ignored him, turning to me with a smile. Welcome back, Miss Carter. Your usual table is ready in the private dining room. Would you like the investor's wine list brought over now or after your walkthrough? For a second, silence engulfed the table. Then my father choked on his wine, coughing into his napkin. My mother's hand froze midair. Claire blinked rapidly, confused. What? My father sputtered. Marcus remained perfectly composed. Miss Carter is the owner of Honest Table. She prefers to dine privately when she visits. Claire squinted at me. You work here? Like, managing tables or something? I met her gaze. Not quite. My mother's voice cracked. So you know the staff? I trained most of them, I answered softly. My father leaned in, desperate. Assistant manager then? Sous chef? I folded my hands and let the silence stretch before replying. No, Dad. I own this restaurant. Honest Table is mine. I founded it. I run it. Every dish you've tasted tonight started with me. For the first time, they were speechless. You can't be serious, Claire whispered. She's joking, my father said quickly, clinging to denial. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, sir, Miss Carter is not only the owner but the executive chef and founder of our entire restaurant group. This flagship is the heart of her brand. My mother repeated the word, stunned. The brand? Yes, I said evenly. 7 locations now. Boston, Portland, Chicago, Denver, all built from the farm you once called Dirt and Dreams. Claire's voice trembled. You lied. You made us think you were struggling. No, I corrected. You assumed I was, and I let you. Why wouldn't you tell us? My mother asked, blinking fast, pearls twisting in her fingers. I looked around the table, the people who had erased me without a second thought. Because I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing, I said. And now I know. Silence, heavy, sharp, undeniable. Then I leaned forward, my voice steady. I don't need acknowledgement. I need respect. Real respect. Not the kind that arrives only after a Forbes article or a reservation confirmation. If we're going to have any relationship, it will be on my terms. That means no more jokes about manure, no sideways glances at my boots, no whispered pity about how I live. No networking favors, no investment offers, no invitations just so you can show off your daughter's restaurant. I'm not a trophy now that I'm successful. I'm the same girl who chose soil and sweat over silk and champagne, and I'll never apologize for it. My father swallowed hard, his face pale. Claire shifted uncomfortably. My mother's lip trembled, but no words came. For once, I didn't feel small at that table. I felt unshakable. And as Marcus stepped aside, waiting for my cue, I knew the balance of power had shifted forever. For a long moment, no one spoke. The entrees cooled on their plates, untouched, the aroma of braised pork shoulder filling the silence. Claire was the first to break it. Her voice was softer now, stripped of mockery. So, it's all true? I nodded. Every bit of it. From the pigs you laughed at, to the farm you dismissed, to the restaurants you're sitting in now. My father sat stiff, eyes narrowed as though trying to reassemble his version of me into the woman before him. You built all of this? He muttered. Yes, I said, with blistered hands, sleepless nights, and a belief that mud and sweat could be worth something. My mother twisted her pearl necklace, her old shield when words failed her. But the funding, the expansion, how could you possibly manage it? I worked 3 jobs the first year. I borrowed, I pitched, I risked everything. And every dollar I earned, I put back into this. That's how. Claire leaned back, exhaling. You could have called. You didn't have to cut us off. I raised an eyebrow. You cut me off the day I said I wanted pigs instead of prestige. You told people I was having a phase, that I'd crawl back. I didn't. We were worried, my mother offered weakly, though it sounded more like a defense than an apology. You were embarrassed, I corrected. Embarrassed that your daughter chose mud over marble. Another silence settled, heavier than before. Finally, I spoke again. From now on, everything changes. If we're going to have a relationship, it will be on my terms. No more belittling. No more treating me like the family failure. Respect me or don't bother showing up. My father cleared his throat, searching for ground. What matters now is this achievement. Emily, you've done something remarkable, and we all want to acknowledge that. I don't need acknowledgement, I said firmly. I need respect. Real respect. Not the kind that comes only after Forbes validates me. If you can't give that, then this dinner will be the last one. Claire's eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen in years. Hesitation. Maybe even regret. That's fair, she said quietly. Then, after a pause, if it means anything, I'd love to host my rehearsal dinner here. With you, if you'd allow it. Her words caught me off guard. For the first time that night, I felt my lips curve into a genuine smile. You're still my sister, Claire. And yes, I'll host it. But make no mistake, this isn't about proving myself to you. It's about offering what I've built, on my terms. Claire nodded, eyes glistening. Understood. For the first time in years, the table didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt fragile, tentative, but maybe, just maybe, like the beginning of something new. Later, after the plates were cleared and the staff dimmed the lights, I stepped into the kitchen. Miranda, my head chef and right hand, looked up from the pass. So, she smirked. How was dinner with royalty? I laughed, shaking my head. They choked on the pork literally and figuratively. The rhythm of closing shift grounded me, as it always did. Tasting sauces, adjusting char, checking the herb garden out back. When the team finally left and the restaurant fell into its after-hours stillness, I lingered on the patio, notebook in hand. I wrote, I used to think success would feel like applause, but it doesn't. It feels like peace. Like walking into a room with mud still on your boots and not flinching. Like stars faint above a city sky, steady and constant, reminding you where you came from. Success is not needing their approval anymore, and realizing you never did. I closed the leather cover, exhaled into the cool night air, and looked up. The stars were dimmer than on the farm, but still there, constant, like roots. And I knew, at last, I had come full circle, not because they finally saw me, but because I no longer needed them to.